Well, we want to welcome everyone back that went on the trip to Israel, and everyone had a great time. We've enjoyed visiting about the trip to Israel, and if you ever get a chance to go, as I've told y'all, you want to make sure that you go to the Holy Land because it is your homeland where you will serve God from one day. I want to continue on with our teaching that we stopped off with the last Tuesday night that we met. And we were talking about the antichrist and where the antichrist is going to originate from. And I was telling you my opinion and my interpretation of the antichrist. And I want to make it perfectly clear that this is my interpretation. It is the interpretation of many scholars. I can tell you that 25 years ago, when I began really delving in and seeing the growth of Islam in the world, and I began to really start studying the things that may be prophetic one day. There were many Bible scholars who scoffed at the idea of what role Islam would play in the end time. Now, 25 years later, there's not scoffing going on, but there are scholars who are right and left falling in line and agreeing that the eighth empire is probably going to be an Islamic empire. And we'll get into that and study that a little bit later in this series. So to prepare you for that, what I'm telling you is I believe this Antichrist is going to arise out of the Middle East. I believe he is going to be a Muslim, and I believe he is going to come from the Babylonian region. Now that's pretty definitive. And there's not very many times that you really hear me. I will give you an interpretation of symbolism and everything else, but after years of study of this, I am convinced in my heart enough that I will tell you that is my opinion about the Antichrist. And you will hear everything from he's going to be a Jew and he's going to be this and everything. And y'all have heard me teach before, and I'll tell you many reasons why that's not going to happen. Number one, 2 billion people that are Muslims are not going to follow a Jew anywhere. There's been too many thousands of years of hatred to go there. So I do not believe that it's going to be a Jew out of the tribe of Dan, like many scholars have taught for a whole lot of years. But I think everything fits in place for this Antichrist to be a Muslim, to come out of the Babylonian region. This Babylonian region one day is going to become one of the strongest regions in the world. Many of these nations are proliferating themselves and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I don't know if you know this, but Saudi Arabia now has probably the 4th largest army and military in the world. And you say, how's that possible? I'd say because of money. You know, they pay to become that. And so, you know, there is a lot of people will say, well, that's a good thing because they're on the United States side. Well, they always have been to an extent because we've given them all of the oil knowledge and how to do the oil and everything else. But getting all the money makes them pretty independent. And never forget the fact that they are Islamic, totally. Matter of fact, it was proven, if you remember, during 9/11, most of those radical Islamists who flew those planes into the towers, you know where they were from? Saudi Arabia. So let's not forget, this region of the world, okay, is a hotbed of hatred for the Jews. And it's going to become a strong region at some point in time. When you look at Isaiah 17:1, y'all have heard me do the teaching on Damascus. Damascus, Syria, is going to become a heap at some point in time because of the prophecy there in Isaiah 17. According to Ezekiel 38:5, Persia is going to be impacted by a future war. Now, when I say Persia, do you know who I'm talking about? Iran. And they're going to be impacted by a future war. What country sits between Syria and Iran? Iraq. And you know the story of Iraq and how we've been in there, in and out of there, fought the battle, took Saddam Hussein out, okay? Iraq sits between these two, which makes this nation of Iraq a very key nation in the future. The Antichrist, the Bible tells us, is going to initiate a mark on the head or on the hand. And on the 7 heads of the dragon, Revelation tells us, are the names of blasphemy. It is a spirit of Antichrist that denies that Jesus is the Son of God. You will find that in 1 John 2:22, which is just one of the scriptures that John used to tell you that the Antichrist spirit denies that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. That's very critical for you to remember and understand about all this, especially for its implication on future events. In Islam, the faithful who pray have marks already on their head. They are called the mark of prostration. It is the mark that is on their forehead, different from the Hasidic Jews who prayed on the plain. If you see the Muslims pray, they pray with their head bowed, touching the ground. And those who are in most diligent prayer are said to make themselves a mark on their forehead because of that prostration position that they are in. And so those who pray have marks of prostration on their head. In Islam, there are headbands that are worn by the radical groups, Al-Qaeda, the Mahdi, the Hamas. I'll talk to you about those headbands a little bit later on. Remember this, the Islamic profession of faith states, I bear witness that there is no deity other than Allah and that Muhammad is his servant and messenger. The Quran speaks to the fact that there is not a son of God. The 10 kings also have the names of blasphemy on their heads. Now remember that's Revelation 17:3. I want to talk to you now in Revelation 13, which is where we are, chapter 13, verse 11 through 15. Pat, read them for us. We're going to be talking about the second beast that's seen here in Revelation and the false prophet.
Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wounds had been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. Okay,
let's talk about these beasts that it's talking about here in Revelation 13. The first beast is the Antichrist that comes rising up out of the sea. That is one of the reasons that I'm telling you, and that's Revelation 13:1. I believe the sea that it's talking about here is the Mediterranean Sea, and that's why I think the Antichrist is going to come out of this region, which is an almost exclusive Islamic region except for Israel, this little country sitting in the middle of all that. So the Antichrist is this first beast that rises up out of the sea. The second beast that's mentioned here in Revelation 13:11 is the false prophet who is rising up out of the earth. Now the first beast, it says, is on a white horse and later forms an empire in Revelation 6:2. Again, I remind you about the prophecy in Islam about their Mahdi, who they claim is going to come riding back on a white horse one day. And I'm telling you, it's a perfect picture of the white horse Antichrist as depicted earlier in Revelation 6 that we've already talked about. So when you're looking at this first beast on a white horse later on forms this eighth empire that we're going to talk about. Now, this second beast in Revelation 13:11 has two horns like a lamb. And you find this arising in this middle of the tribulation. That's when Revelation 13 is. So all of a sudden the second beast comes on. Now the word lamb is mentioned in Revelation 27. And I think Revelation 17. Oh, it's mentioned, the word lamb is mentioned in Revelation 27 times and refers to Christ in every single reference except this reference here in Revelation 13:11 through 15. The two horns of this false prophet identify his ability, listen, to merge two religions together. So he's coming wearing two horns. It's very critical to, I think, the interpretation of this false prophet. There are three religions in Jerusalem. Name them for me. Christianity, Judaism, Islam. Okay? They are in there. The Jews are going to, the Bible tells us, flee at some point in time. Well, flee this time in the middle of the tribulation. Thus, two religions are remaining. I am telling you that I believe the two religions that's going to be remaining at that time is going to be Islam and an apostate Christianity. Now you say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, how many of you believe that Christianity on a lot of fronts right now is becoming apostate? Just not any longer real. You know, there's so many that claim to be Christian faiths that some of them even no longer proclaim that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. But they call themselves Christians. Well, I'm sorry, folks. But Jesus Christ is the Son of God, period. And that's what the sole foundation of all this is about, that we're teaching in the book of Revelation. Now, I'm going to tell you I'll prepare this for those of you who have a Catholic background, and I wish Niall was here tonight, because what I'm going to teach you, I'm not going to teach you from a Protestant standpoint, but this is from what the Catholic Church actually has had their scholars teach. There are many Catholics that teach that the false prophet one day is going to be a defective pope. That has been part of their teaching for many, many hundreds of years, that there will be a defective pope one day. This pope, they believe, one day is going to deny that Jesus is the Son of God. And if in fact that is a reality and that does happen, that will fit directly in line with Islamic teaching. This is how close this is to forming this big world religion that we think is going to come on the scene one day. Now you can imagine what that would do if that happened, that a pope were to make that claim one day that he's not. Because Islam thinks that Jesus is a wonderful prophet. They believe Isa, that's what they call Jesus, is going to come back with the Mahdi one day. And he's going to come back with the Mahdi so that he could tell everybody that all this stuff about they've been telling about him dying on the cross and resurrection has been a lie. That's what the Muslims say Jesus is. So he's well thought of in Islam, except for the fact. And you can find, by the way, if you could read Islam and you were inside, did you get to go inside the Gold Dome or just go look at it?
Well, they won't let you inside.
No, they still won't let you get inside the gold. But if you would go in there, they have sayings written all over the walls that Allah is the only God, there is no other God, and Muhammad is the only prophet. And they're just written all on the walls inside that mosque. And so this Pope is going to deny that one day. This false prophet at the middle of tribulation is going to set himself up as though he is Christ himself. And he's going to do that by beginning to perform false miracles. And he will perform these false miracles through the power of Satan, which is now indwelling the antichrist. Because Satan was kicked out of heaven to the earth. And now he is indwelling the antichrist. And so now you have at mid-trib the antichrist and the false prophet. And they're coming together in this temple area now. And they set themselves up, and the false prophet sets himself up as if he's Jesus Christ himself through working these miracles. Now, this second beast, this false prophet, is going to perform counterfeit miracles. Again, Islam teaches that Isa, Jesus, is going to appear at Damascus on a white horse. That's what they teach. He's going to be coming from Damascus. Isa and the Mahdi will join together and move to Jerusalem to defeat the Jews. That is part of their end-time prophecy in Islam. Islam does not believe that Jesus Christ was crucified. They think that that was a false thing that was put forth and that he is not the Son of God. That's specifically their beliefs. In Matthew 24 and 24, these miracles will be of satanic origin. Make no mistake about that. And in Revelation 12 and 6, this image of the beast that this false prophet puts upon top of the temple and causes the abomination of desolation, it will be done by this image, is going to be the very thing that causes all of the Jews at mid-tribulation to flee to the wilderness. Now this image that is put on the temple, is the Greek word for, and this should not surprise you, icon. There are three Greek words for image in the New Testament, and that is E-I-K-O-N, or in other words, our word icon, I-C-O-N. This image, folks, is going to supernaturally speak and live. You say, wait a minute. Are there any examples, maybe not of speaking and living, but are there any examples of things going on today out of the ordinary that are reported? How many of you ever heard of the stigmata? Stigmata, when I describe it, you'll know what I'm talking about, is when they are having many of these Catholic icons of Jesus having just all of a sudden blood pouring out, or having tears coming down. Y'all have read about that. There are cited times of this. There are things where they say, and they've tried to disprove them, but there are all kind of things that have gone on in respect to this one day. We see this bleeding and crying images, and you can go look it up on the web, and you'll see them everywhere. And the image worship, folks, what we know, according to Exodus 24, according to Leviticus 26:1 and Deuteronomy 4:23, image worship is forbidden in Scripture. You have to be very careful about worshiping. And this image that is going to be put on top of the temple, that is going to supernaturally speak and move, or whatever, is going to cause many people to follow and to worship. And make no mistake about it, these will be satanic, supernatural miracles that are being performed. The Bible says when this happens, that men are going to worship the image. Now, there are 4 Greek words for worship. This word here is proskuneo. It means kiss toward. as to kiss the emperor's ring? Well, that is essentially what is going to happen. The people who see this image are going to bow down and kiss the ring. They're going to worship this image. In Revelation 13:4, 8, 12, 14, 9, 11, men worship the beast and this image. I can't believe it. The image will speak and will live. And folks, I can tell you, nothing like this has ever occurred or happened in world history. But it's going to happen at mid-trib on this temple site. The whole issue about all of this one world religion is going to be, in my opinion, based upon the fact and the argument about Jesus Christ being the Son of God. And that denying of that is what is going to split one day and cause this other, I believe, one world religion to be brought together, if it makes sense, especially if that happens, to where Islam and apostate Christianity can form this religion and be of one accord and one mind to worship this beast. And that's how many are going to fall at this mid-tribulation. So, it's an amazing thing when we see in Revelation the revealing of the Antichrist, the revealing of the false prophet, what is going to happen with this abomination of desolation that occurs on the temple. And the Antichrist will cease worship to happen at this particular time of mid-tribulation. The two witnesses are killed at this time, and 3.5 days later they are resurrected and they are taken up. And so we're beginning to move on and talk about the mysterious mark of the beast, which is, I think, where your notes start this week, because I finished up with those. This now, folks, is going to be the beginning of the greater tribulation that's going to last for a final 42 months. Except the days are shortened. Matthew 24:22 says, there would not be 1 ounce of flesh saved. That's how terrible these 42 months are going to be. Were not God to step in and shorten those days, not a single piece of flesh could be saved. It'll be a time of trouble, says Daniel 12:1, such as never was in the history of the world. It's an amazing thing. And so you see this happening at the temple. You see this worship going on. And all of a sudden, we see a scene change one more time in the middle of the tribulation. 666, the mysterious mark. It is extremely important that we take a look at this mark. It's been talked about. This is probably the mark of the beast. That you probably could not say that in any society walking in the world today. That somebody will not know and understand that this mark is alluded to the end time. There are some people who look at this number of 666 as an evil number, as we do. And there are some who do not necessarily think it's that evil, as you'll find out as we begin to study this. So let's go back and look at the setting of Revelation 13. We are in the middle of the tribulation in Revelation 13:5, at the beginning of the 42 months that are remaining. The Antichrist has invaded and occupied half of Jerusalem, according to Zechariah 14:2. If you go back and read Zechariah, he predicts this. He's going to occupy half of Jerusalem at this time. And according to Daniel 9:27, the Antichrist has stopped the sacrifices in the temple. Okay, so this happens at this time period. Daniel 12:11. Listen to this. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Now, many people have remarked, wait a minute, Dan, I thought it was 42 months is 260 days. Now, we're looking at this prophecy that says 1,290 days. That's from Daniel. And it says that 1,290 days is from the sacrifice to the image being set up. So 1,290 minus 1260 is how long? 30 days, in which the Antichrist. And this is what my belief is about this extra 30 days. Once he causes this sacrifice and he takes it out of the temple, I believe it takes 30-day time period in which the Antichrist takes over and begins through the false prophet to set up this image. I believe that's what that 30-day time period is that mentions the difference, is the reason Daniel and John disagree on the number of days there. And it makes sense if you think about that. The Antichrist and the false prophet are now headquartered in Jerusalem. That's according to Daniel 11:45. The two seas that are talked about here is the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. And if you were to look on a map, you will see that Jerusalem is right in between the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. Jerusalem is the holy mountain that is talked about here, where they're going to reside and take this in. Now, this mark is going to be for the purpose of buying and selling. So turn to Revelation 13, Pat, and read verses 16, 17, and 18 for us.
It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the number of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666.
So here's the infamous scriptures that deal with this mark. The false prophet helps initiate a buying and selling system. That's what's going on here. That's what you need to recognize. That's been initiated. Now, why in the world would the Antichrist and false prophet desire to control all buying and selling at this time? Any ideas? Well, I thought you'd never ask. It's to control food distribution. You've got to go back and look at what I've been teaching you over the last 2 months. There has been tremendous desolation going in the first 42 months during the wrath of the Lamb, where so many things have caused famines, earthquakes, droughts, everything you can think of. They want to control the food distribution because food shortages are going to occur starting all the way back with the judgment starting in Revelation 6. So you take all of those things and the drought and no rain for 42 months, and now we're at mid-trib. So you better believe they're setting up a system for buying and selling. And it's an amazing thing when you look at this and you see it. You see, they are planning on controlling the masses two ways. By religious conversion to the Antichrist new religion. That's one way. These people are always searching for something. So this group over here finally agrees with this group. They come together. We can all worship together. We're all one big happy family. Let's all get along. It's part of that spirit that exists in the world today, the Antichrist spirit that John told us about, that says Jesus Christ is not the Son of God. And so all these people are going to fall in line with that, and they're going to be controlled by being part of this new religious system. You'll find that in Revelation 13, verses 16, 17, and 18. And they're going to control the food supply by setting up the buying and selling, according to Revelations 18 and 8, because of famines and droughts and everything else that's occurred in the world because of all the judgments up until this time. How in the world is the beast going to control the system? Now you see the purpose of the mark. The mark, the name, and the number of the beast is used to control the system. You know, we've all heard about the mark and everything else, but there's a purpose for that mark. It is designed for a purpose and will be used as a purpose in the end time. What is the mark and the name and the number of the beast? Let me tell you, back in the 1800s, early 1900s, now this is what our Christian scholars would tell you about this mark. John Darby said in the 1800s, and this is a Bible scholar, he said, I am very ignorant of this number. I really don't have any idea what this number is. I don't even know what it means. I don't understand that number. That was 1800 Bible scholar. Isbn T. Beckwith, which was another scholar back during this time, he is known to have issued a quote to where he said, this number that we read about in Revelation is a mystery. It's a mystery number. We don't know what this number means. We don't know what this number is about. And so when you begin to see these people, Merrill Unger, many of you have heard this name, okay? Merrill Unger said the precise nature of this number 666 is unknown. Unknown. Well, I don't know about you, but that surprised me that here a little over 100 years ago, famous scholars were in pretty much disbelief about this number, knowing what it was. It was unknown. They did not know what this number was. They did not know what this mark was. Now, in my opinion, there's a reason for that, okay? Number one of the signs that we're nearing the end is that knowledge is going to increase greater than it ever has before. I can tell you in my lifetime, folks, and I did a study on this at one point in time, that I was told that knowledge increase in the 1900 to the year 2000 had doubled in that 100 years over the previous 6,000 years of history, or 5,900 years of history. So you take all the knowledge of history up to 1900, that knowledge doubled in the next 100 years. I also read a study that says in the next 10 years, the knowledge went 10 times greater than that. So the increase in knowledge in this world and our ability to study the Word of God and what we see expounded on, that we can see all of these things, there's no doubt in my mind that the impact of the increase of knowledge toward this end time has allowed all of us to be better able to interpret these things that many scholars down through the years just did not have the benefit of what we have, because what? I believe we're in the last day. And He's given us this insight and He's given this knowledge to be able to take a look and see these things. Now, the word mark is the Greek word charagma and means to scratch, an etching, or a stamp. That's what the word mark means. The Bible tells us that the mark is either going to be placed on the forehead or on the right hand. One of the two. Now, let's talk about 6 mark theories that I've come across in my lifetime. Okay, first one in 1973 was the barcode theory. Remember that one? That there are 7 units in a barcode. There are 4 marks on that barcode, and that many people thought that barcode was going to be the thing that was going to be used to be marked. And of course, I heard one preacher, famous preacher, say one time, didn't think it was going to be a barcode. Not a lady in the world would allow a barcode to be put on her forehead. Come on, ladies, that's funny. So anyway, the barcode was fastly, and we see now that the barcode came on in 1973, and that wasn't a mark. And so along about the 1980s, there became an ISO 9000 theory, and if any of y'all are into any part of of quality control business, which I am in the hospital business, we're dealing with ISO 9000 things all the time because they're there to control quality. And so many people thought that the way this mark would come about was this theory. However, all we've been able to prove about the ISO 9000 is it's just been a system that just adds more work on quality control people that needs to be added. That's just basically it. So it wasn't a mark. Then we came along in the 1990s, and we came up with the .com theory. And there are many people that said www was the beast and was the mark, and that was going to be it. A lot of people said if you take www and you put the Hebraic equivalent of www, that is the letter Vav in Israel, and the letter Vav is the sixth letter of the Hebraic alphabet, and so www stood for 666. That's what many people were saying back when www and the .com. And they were believing that and looked at that, and there were many people who were thinking that that's how it was going to be controlled. I don't know about you, but it looked like to me that the internet's pretty well out of control and not in control, so I don't think that was the mark. Then you had people who came across and said, we have the bio hand scanners. That came about in 2004. And we said, now what do you mean bio hand scanners? You know, that'll never come across where you'll be able to scan, everybody in the world. That's just too hard. Well, here you are in 2018, and all you do is touch your finger to your phone, and it what? Opens up. They got scans everywhere. Wouldn't be anything to bio-scan your hand, your palm print, your thumb print, your fingerprint. It's already in use. Many of the things that you do today are done by that. And it's just growing. I mean, how many times do you see the eye scanners? People walking up, showing their eye, they walk in. Show their palm, walk in. Give their thumb, walk in. Put your finger on your cell phone, open it up. So there's another. So the mark is going to be, that's what the mark's going to be. It's going to be able to scan this. Well, about 2006, something else came along. Y'all remember this one. This was the chip implant. Everybody remember that? Came up with a chip the size of a grain of rice. And that chip could be implanted right between your thumb and your forefinger or in your forehead, either one. And it's the same kind of chip that you put on your pet. The vet goes in, puts a chip in the pet. If you lose your pet, they scan it and they find out it's your pet. Same type of theory. And everybody said, oh, that's it. That's it. That's finally the way now that they'll be able to control it. They'll be able to do it through this chip and through this chip implant. And that went real well until they began to do some studies on rats and found out that may have caused cancer in some rats to have these implants, these chips put in them. So that lost its popularity. Then they came out with a new China chip that was supposed to be bigger and better, and not bigger, smaller, more accurate, and would be able to take the thing. It has now gone by the wayside there. So in 2008, the latest theory, and I haven't heard any since then, but the latest theory was that it would be a chipless tattoo. There is an RFID ink that can be made. And this ink can be tattooed on a person, either on their forehead or on their hand. And it can be done in either visible or invisible ink. So, okay, you're getting a little closer to something that's believable. At less than 4 seconds it takes to be able to scan this mark and to figure out what this is. Many of you may or may not have heard, and I taught this 8 years ago to my class, if you remember. I told you that the Indian government was assigning 600 million of its people a 16-digit identification number. And it was for the purpose to help all of these people get their government food and services. They figured back 8 years ago that it would save them $4 billion a year in corruption. And of course, we know what corruption is. Can you imagine how corrupt our Medicare system and health system is of people and Social Security that are stealing numbers and doing all that? Well, this system was a way India found out to cut that out by giving this 16-digit to these people. They proclaimed that fingerprints and iris scans would eventually be used by the year 2017 and 2018. And all I'll tell you is look that up on the internet. Because it's things that have become realities. So, this mark could be a chip, a tattoo, invisible ink, or folks, it may be something we hadn't seen yet. Because you've all heard these theories down through the years. And every time the first theory came, I remember when the first theory came out about the barcode, I thought, that makes a little sense. And all of a sudden, the .com theory, www, 666. It just on and on and on and on, these things. So we don't know what this mark is going to be. But this number is important for you to know. I mean, you do realize today that you're known as a number, don't you? You're not a name, okay? You're known by your house number, okay? I went to pharmacy to pick up a prescription a while ago. Mr. Turner, what's your address? 207 Summer Creek. Known by number. My license. How many of you can quote from memory your driver's license number? I can. You're known by that. That's your number. That's nobody else's number. That's your number. How about your Social Security number? How many of you know your Social Security number? Every one of us. You're already in it. You've been a number since you were born, and you got this Social Security number. How about banking? How many of you got numbers on your checks? That check number is specific to you. You're known by that number. You go into the bank and you say, look, I have a routing number and a bank. Here's my account number. And so you give them your account number and don't say a word about who you are. They'll plug it in the system and say, well, hello, Mr. Turner, how you doing? You're known by a number in banking. Phone number. Nobody has your phone number but you. How about your credit card number? We're people of numbers. We're worried about getting numbers placed on us. We got numbers all over us already. This name of the beast is going to be part of this, and this name of the beast is authority, okay? And this system is going to have a name to it one day, I firmly believe. And it's going to have something to do with this number 666. Now, if you look on your notes there, I have a little fun play with the alphabets there and the Roman numerals. And many people who want to talk about, this is going to be the Roman Empire revived one day, that the antichrist is going to come out of. Well, the Roman numerals have letters and numerical values. Now, I've taught this before in my study that I've taught you on gematria. And gematria is nothing more than giving a number value to letters, so that you can come up with names that have a number value and different things, and that's just what the study of gematria is. And I'm going to leave it as a simple explanation of that, although it's in greater detail than that. But the number 666 in the Roman numerals I think is interesting. If you'll look, the Roman numeral value for D is 500. Roman numeral value for C is 100. The Roman numeral value for L is 50. For X is 10. For V is 5. And for I is 1. Those are all of Roman numerals. You add up those values, and it adds up to 666. That's just Roman numerals. You say, Dan, what does that mean? I say to you, it means if you take the Roman numerals and add up the numerical value, it comes to 666. There was in 1986 a W.B. Godby who did a study of a very popular printing about Revelation. And he did the Greek letter in the English translation of the Greek letter. And of course, there are numerical Greek number values that are put with this. So the Greek word for lambda is L. And where they came up with this was, and this was very interesting in the subject, Godby said that the word Latinos, okay, is the Latin translation, okay, which literally is who is going to take over this religious system during this time. And of course, what do we know religion or faith that teaches Latin? It's from the Catholic foundation, okay, and the Catholic background. And so the word Latinos that you see in this deal here, lambda L is worth 30, alpha A is worth 1, tau T 300, epsilon E 5, iota I 10, nu N 50, omicron O 70, sigma S 200. Isn't it amazing that the Greek letters all add up to 666? You say, Dan, what does this mean? It means that you take this Greek alphabet and put an English value to it, and they add up to 666. But it is interesting to note that these two languages are based and come out of the Roman Empire. That these two things are found. So that's just an interesting sidelight that I wanted to mention to you that I thought you might find interesting. Now, let's talk about the Roman Empire. And I'm just going to add just a little bit more, and I want to get to a stopping point, and we'll stop. But from the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, which was the first time that the Roman Empire began to fight the Arabs, to the conquest by the Arabs in 636, where the Ottoman Empire started taking over, that time period is 666 years. Now, to count these numbers, again, is called gematria. You assign number values to letters. There are Hebrew gematrias used, where the Hebrew and Greek, both alphabet letters interchange for the numbers. It's an amazing thing when you look at it. Both change names to numbers and numbers to names intermittently. Many names that total 666 in these two alphabets that I just mentioned to you and talked to you about in both the Hebrew and the Greek have names that number 666. For example, Mohammed in its numerical value number 666. Napoleon, number 666. Hitler, number 666. Kissinger, number 666. And Bill Clinton, number 666. Just sidelight. There was just mentioned briefly, there was a time that there was some scholars who believed that the number was 616. It was based upon a study of imaging techniques that was done at Oxford in 2005, to where they imaged a manuscript. They thought the number was actually 616 rather than 616, but they've gone back and we really believe now, comparing everything, that the number is actually 666. But if you ever run across that, I just make that allusion to you, and I don't have time to go into why it all disproves it, but most scholars agree that it is not, never was intended to be 616. And many people believe that the reason they did that 616 is they were trying to make Nero Caesar fit. And Nero Caesar fits 616. Because everybody really thought Nero Caesar was going to come back one day as the Antichrist. That's how strong and hated Nero was. So, this 3rd century manuscript that they found that came up with all this, the New Testament Greek was translated into Latin by St. Jerome in 382 AD. The Peshitta was a translation from the Aramaic used in the Syrian Orthodox Church. In 1519, Erasmus translated the Bible from Greek and the Latin text. And he used the text from the 12th and 13th century from the Byzantines and the Koines and the majority text. Basically, what all this I'm talking about is it became the basic Greek text for the New Testament during this time period. And in the earliest translations, there are 3 Greek letters used for 666. Let me teach you this, and I'm finished tonight. In Revelation 13, these were later given their numerical value as 660 and 6. This 3rd century Egyptian manuscript in 350 AD uses the Greek letters chi, xi, and stigma. That's CHI, XI, and STIGMA. The oldest manuscripts that talk about this mark use these 3 Greek letters. Later, they were calculated to be 660 and 6 as the number of the beast, because these 3 Greek letters have numerical values with them. The Greek letter chi is 600. The Greek letter xi is 60. The Greek letter stigma, which that's the Greek, but it's stigma, would have been the 6th letter of the alphabet and was assigned a numerical value of 6. So the letter CHI is transliterated as X. Stigma is not the modern Greek alphabet. In ancient times, it represented the 6th letter of the alphabet. It's not a real letter, but it's invented by the Greeks to represent the number 6. Now, what does all this mean? I'm going to tell you more about that next week. But it has a lot to do, and do your homework this week, is to go on the internet and to look up radical Islam and look up headbands. And when you look up the headbands that are being worn by these radicals, look and see if you can see an X, a backwards 3, and next week I'll tell you what they mean. Amen? All right. Are there any questions?
I've got one.
Okay.
Everything's so exact. Why? I wonder why they didn't pick whether it was the forehead or the hand.